Hello and welcome to my channel. Welcome again to my series called The God Universe. This is chapter 18. Yep, chapter 18. The nature of true purpose. In this video, I am going to explain the nature of true purpose from a consciousness perspective angle. So I use the term true purpose because we all understand purpose or true purpose. We all use it. It's a term we use a lot. And so so I'm using the same term just to help you understand. I'm not a fan of it, but I'm using the same term just so you know I'm trying to talk about what you're here to do. We're all constantly hearing about do what you love, find your true purpose. We're all hearing about this, but I want to explain what true purpose really is. So I've got my trusted notes. It's a long video. And you've seen that before, you've seen that prop before, and my flip chart. So, what is true purpose? True purpose is your consciousness energy, so your consciousness light energy, your consciousness light energy translated, and your aligned life path. And your aligned life path. So I've got it here. I'll move this up and then I'll move it back again. I think we can see everything. So we've got true purpose equals consciousness creativity plus consciousness translated plus aligned life path. In this video, I will be discussing what each of these are, and I'm going to start first with consciousness translated. Right, if you remember chapter 10, if you remember this from chapter 10, these were two inner beings, but this was about characteristics, right? I said that if you remember this, I said, we are all on a range. All of this for us, all these personalities and abilities are all on ranges for our own individual consciousness light, and that in the pineal gland mesh filter limiter, the inner being targets a set of values, like one here, maybe one over there, and one over there. Targets a set of values. I can still use this prop before it falls apart on me. Targets a set of value, and that set of value is your current persona as it goes through the mesh filter limiter and and infuses the body. Your consciousness light energy, you as the outer consciousness, infuses your body, this body. And consciousness translated means the way you act. And that's very tricky to understand. So, if you think about languages, right? A word means the same thing in different languages, right? So I picked a word here like hang on. I picked the word stone, right? And in Spanish, stone is called la padre. In Croatia, it is kamen. So there's a couple of Nigerian languages. In Yoruba, it's a Nigerian language. Okuta. These all mean the same thing. They just translated into different languages. Does that make sense? So if you think from a language perspective, a word means the same thing. A word has different sounds and words. Silly sentence. A word has different sounds in different languages. It's articulated differently, but it's the same meaning. So in alphanumeric numbers, the number 2 is, what is it, the number 2? If I wrote the number 2, alphanumeric, I'll put something like this. You know, just the number 2. I don't know if you can see this. Green isn't very good. If I wrote it in Roman numerals, 2 is like this. Mean the same thing, but represented differently. So, you, as consciousness energy, when you infuse this physical body, your mannerism, your personality is your consciousness light energy in physical form. Does that make sense now? So your physical form, me always gesturing when I speak, I can't help it. It's automatic. This is how I act. And it's a translation. It's a translation of light energy in physical body. A translation of the number 2 in alphanumeric to Roman numerals is this. Translation of consciousness energy in physical body, in physical body, physical form, is what you are, your personality, the way you act. That's your light energy translated into a physical form. And as you know, your physical self is unique to you. Your personality is unique to you. The way you talk, the way you gesture, the way your eyes move or twitch your nose or something is unique to you. If your light energy was taken out of your body and put in another physical form, the way you act will be the same. Your family will recognize you. They will wonder why you're in a different physical body, but they will recognize you because of your mannerism. Your mannerism is always the same. So that's you. I'm basically saying you as consciousness, light energy translated into a physical form. This is it, us in this physical body. Our personality, our mannerism and characteristics. Yeah? So, I'm going to write here, this is actually the way we act. So I'm going to write it. I'll just get a black pen. Okay, now I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about consciousness creativity. Okay? Let's move this forward. I'm going to talk about consciousness creativity, just making sure that we can, this needs to be like this, I think, that you can see it. Okay, so Consciousness, creativity. What did I write here? Just go around in circles again. Right. Consciousness, creativity is expressing how consciousness thinks and feels. Okay? Consciousness, creativity is expressing how consciousness thinks and feels. I'm going to start with the feelings aspect. So, I just want to move that back a little bit. So, for feelings, consciousness, creativity is like a hub and spoke. It's like a hub and spoke system. Consciousness, look at this diagram. Consciousness is central, right? And consciousness expresses itself in a number of ways. So consciousness is central and it expresses itself in a number of ways because it is linked to emotions. So it can be, the way it expresses itself might be, should I come over here? I don't know if can we see this properly if I stood here? Can't see me properly. Right, I'm right-handed, so. Okay. Right, what have we got? So, if you look at this diagram, consciousness can express itself as a sculptress, photographer, dancer, storyteller, comedian, fiction writer, making videos, YouTube. These are all, the list goes on. These are all examples of ways that consciousness can express. These are all modes of expressions linked to emotions. Okay? Right, now I'm just going to talk about this. Oh, this is not even secure. Just fall over. Okay, now, in chapter 6, I think, chapter 5, when I talked about consciousness intelligence, I said that creativity is one of the 4 elements of consciousness intelligence, and consciousness intelligence is within your consciousness. And I said that consciousness intelligence is within your light energy. Okay? And then in chapter 10, I said that the inner being places themselves over the mesh filter limiter and they try to target a set of values because our personalities and characteristics are in a range. And they try to target a particular value in that range, and that particular value is the outer persona, the outer person, the outer consciousness, right? That looks weird now. So if your personality and characteristics is in your consciousness light and consciousness intelligence, that's wrong. If your personality and characteristics are within your light energy and consciousness intelligence is also within your light energy, your inner being has targeted a static set of value to be you, the outer persona. The inner being target a static, a single set of values. We talked about this in chapter 10. To be the outer persona for your personality and your characteristics and preferences. But because consciousness intelligence is also within your light energy, that set of values, that static set of values, also correspond to a particular creativity. So I'm saying that who you are, you remember this list goes on, right? Who you are as a person has a corresponding intelligence, corresponding consciousness intelligence, and that corresponding consciousness intelligence has associated creativity, and I call this your personal creativity. So your personal creativity, I want to put this away here. So your personal creativity is one that corresponds to the static set of values that you are. Right? So your personal creativity is one that lies or correspond to you as a static set of personality values. Okay? And it's basically you expressing yourself in one or more of these one or more of these modes of expression, and it's usually the one. Can you see? And it's usually the one that you find easiest to do. It comes to you easily. Okay. I mean, I say comes to you easily, but I think what I'm trying to say here is that it's one that you do without much effort. But the thing is that something usually triggers it, right? Or rather, something triggers an emotion, and then you express that emotion in one of these ways. So let me just use this to show. So I've got emotions here. So what you find is there's you as consciousness linked to emotions, and then something triggers this emotion, and let's just write the trigger. I'm just going to put music here because I want to use that as my example. So you're linked to an emotion, something triggers an emotion, and then you express yourself, you express that feeling, right? And then, so let me use myself as an example here. So I love music, and I love dancing to music, different genres. I hear a piece of music and I just want to dance, right? Classical music. I love Tchaikovsky. The first time I saw Swan Lake, I was just mesmerized. I love African music. You know, there's this show, Umoja. when he first came to London. I went to see it 3 times. And with 3 different groups of friends. And every time I was there, I was one of those people in the audience that just couldn't stay still. 3 times, and each time I just couldn't keep myself seated on the chairs and just enjoying the show. I had to be up. I had to move. This is just what I'm like. I absolutely love the way music makes me feel, and especially the music that I like. I don't like all music. Let's not get this twisted. I don't like all music, but the music that I love, the way they make me feel, I just have to express it in a form of dance movement or motion. So some of them make me move slow, and some of them I have got to be, pumped up, happy, and I love the different variation of these feelings. So it's like, for me, it's like I can feel music in my bones. I don't understand. I don't know what it's like not to feel music. Okay? It's like I hear it, I feel it, and then I have to express it. So music is one of those things that triggers, I don't want to say triggers different emotions, because then you might start thinking, well, if you're sad, surely you don't want to keep listening to those music. It depends. Music for different people do different things, but for me, they're just different emotions, different variations of enjoyment. That's it. It's like different variations, different modes of enjoyment. That's what the different music, to be fair, genres is like, we have attached categories to music. And so you now have classical music, you have hip-hop music and African music, and all I know is what I like and what gets me going, and other music, some music I just don't like, even within the same genre. So I can't really say I love all hip-hop music or I love all African music. I can't say that, because they're just certain music just gets me. I just feel it, and I just want to move in certain way. And the movement is how I express what the music makes me feel like. So what I've got here is, there is a trigger, right? So really what I should have written here is not so much music, my light. And what I should have written is the word trigger. There's usually a trigger of an emotion, and then you express yourself in a preferential way. For some people, this trigger could be going out into the woods, being somewhere in nature with mountains, being somewhere in nature with rivers and seas. Some of these could be being in the forest. I keep talking about nature because I do like nature, but there are some things that you see or hear, affect your senses, and that particular trigger and that particular thing triggers your emotion, so you feel something, and then you express yourself in one of these modes of expression. You might want to do comedy, you might want to be a sculptress, you might see something and it triggers and you feel the need to sculpt something, and you sculpting is expressing an emotion, that emotion. So the thing about that whole music thing for me is, I said music is one of them, is that I just express how I feel by dancing, right? And I also love to dance. Like, dancing for me is just, it's effortless and enjoyable. And because it's both of these things, I just indulge myself. I will continue to indulge myself because I love it. Can you see? Something that you love and you are passionate about is so easy. It's so easy. You're not even aware of your actions. Is that, I don't know if that's the right way to say that. You know, it's not like I'm not aware of me dancing. It's that it just feels like an indulgence, and we all like our indulgence. I hope that makes sense, okay? So that's the feelings one. I'll just check that I've covered it. I have covered it. So so one aspect of conscious, let me just bring this back first. I'm just talking to myself, there's nobody there. Just going to write this. So one aspect of consciousness creativity is how it makes you feel. Okay? We've talked about how you act, how it makes you feel. The next one I'm going to talk about is the way you think. So consciousness creativity is actually the way you feel and the way you think. For this one, oh God, my thing is coming off. It's not secure. My A-frame is not secure. To help explain how you think, I've got 10 minutes, I think. Yeah. I don't think you recorded. Oh my God. I was just talking and I don't think this thing recorded. Okay, so, I have to start again. I have to start again now. So I wanted to explain what consciousness creativity is, the aspect that refers to how we think. And to do that, I'm going to story time. I'm going to give you a story at university, okay? Oh no, do you know this is the second time I'm telling this story, because the first time I told it, I don't think it was recorded. Oh my God. So, right. So now all the juice is gone. All the juice is gone. Right, so the story I told was about my time at university. I went to a University of Surrey in Guildford, studied chemical engineering there. Chemical engineering is obviously, it's a logic-based subject. I chose this university because one of its selling point was that it had relationships and links with employers. So on your third year at the university, you would go out and work for 12 months. So we called it at the time sandwich placement. It's called work placement, and I think in America they call it internship, I think, but it's paid internship. So you're paid for 12 months while you're out of university with an employer. So that university allowed sort of a full 12 months work placement, and I was drawn to that. I also was drawn to the fact that I didn't have to go and search employers and ask employers for employment because the relationship already exists between the university, the Department of Chemical Engineering at this university, and the employers. So I didn't have to look for different, because other universities had this scheme, but usually it was they would say, well, you have to go and look for the job yourself. So that was one. Also, these relationships were with really good companies like your big corporations, your BPs, your SOs. So you had this opportunity, right? And what else? They also did international placement. I remember they had 1 or 2 jobs in Germany, and they, at the time, I don't know what they have now, they had 3 jobs in the United States. I was drawn to that. I wanted to go to America. So one of the reasons this is one of the key reasons I went to this university. I was drawn to work, to study at this university, right? So every year we have an influx of students that came back from their work placement. You had a group of students going out to their work placement, and then you have a group of students that are preparing to go out. So towards the end of the second year, all the second years. So all the kids in the second year will no, not all the kids, no, not all the kids. So for those, the department, so the Department of Chemical Engineering decreed or demanded or put in a rule, stated, whatever, that if you wanted to go abroad to study, you had to participate in a creative project. So produce something creative in front of your peers, classroom. And the thing is, I can't even draw a straight line. You know, even with using a ruler, that's not me. I never saw myself as someone that's creative. It's just like, I went for a logic-based subject, so how am I creative? So I'm not creative. I really struggled. But I really wanted to go. I really wanted to go overseas. Not overseas, I wanted to go to the United States. I wanted to work in the United States. Didn't care about the Germany job. The United States, that was the one I wanted. I also wasn't a student that stood out academically. I wasn't exceptional academically. So I felt, so I just blended in. See, blended in is the wrong word. I'm just trying to say I was very average, and I didn't even stand out as a black woman studying engineering, because in that course there was at least a quarter of the students. It wasn't a very large department. It was quite a small department. A quarter of the students were like Asians, were from Malaysia and other Asian countries doing international study placement. So a good proportion of my classmates were minorities. At least half were minorities. There were like 4 black women in my year studying chemical engineering. There was like a number of black guys studying chemical engineering. So I just didn't stand out in looks or in academic prowess. So, and there was that. And the third one is socially. Didn't stand out socially because the department used to put on these social events to get the students together to sort of socialize with each other and everything, which is great. But the thing is, I rarely joined these activities because not because I am that unsociable. I'm not that unsociable. It's just because it was mainly it was a pop culture, and I wasn't into pop culture. Like a lot of universities have this sort of drinking culture, and it's just not my thing. it's not religious, it's just not my thing. So me and my girlfriends would just hang out with each other instead. And that's just how we were at university. So I didn't stand out socially, I didn't stand out academically, I didn't even stand out as a black woman. So that's what I mean by I just blended in. And then we had to do this, and the department recommended you to the employers. And so so from their perspective, I didn't stand out for anything. They didn't see me do anything. You know, I come in and I go. Right. So what will they say that Doris is special at? She's very good academically. She's, you know, we've talked and she's so personable. No, they couldn't really see me because I didn't give them the opportunity to get to know me. Okay, right. And then we have to do competition. So really, from their perspective, the way I saw it was going to be all the other students are going to get first dibs, and I was going to get a crappy job. That's how I was so scared of that. I was going to get a crappy job. All the students that were there socially and academically and everything else were always going to get first dibs at these jobs, at the really good jobs, and I was just going to get nothing. So, and because I really wanted to go to the States, what do? I had the most crappiest ideas, you know? I kept coming up with things like, I don't know what they were bad. They were really bad. Like I felt I had no creative bone in my body. So now, for weeks, nothing. I was just like, oh my God, there's nothing. I can't do anything. And then just a week before presentation day, because you had to do your presentation, your creative thing. It could be anything to your classmates at the lecture theatre and a few other professors. So, and like I say, it could be anything. You can sing, you can play the guitar, you can play drums, whatever. I can't do any of those things. Nothing. I had no musical. I couldn't play an instrument. Anyway. So a week before presentation day, I just woke up with an inspiration and I wrote. I just wrote and wrote and wrote, and as soon as I finished, I ran upstairs to my housemates, who were all in the same department as me. They were all chemical engineers as well. So we lived together because we got on. We did the same course. We got on. We found a house together. So we lived together. So they knew they didn't want to go abroad. These girls knew how much I wanted to go to the States. And it's been like, what are you going to do? When are you going to do it? And in any case, I ran upstairs and I told one of them, I've got it. And I read this speech out to her and she laughed. She laughed so hard. And the interesting thing was that this was probably, I don't know, over a weekend. And in that weekend, they heard it at least twice, this group of girls. And each time, so the second time, they laughed. They loved it that much that it was that good. So, and they were excited for me. They were like, you are gonna nail it. You're gonna nail it. This is good. So, come presentation day, during the week, they helped me prepare my prop as well for the presentation. On presentation day, I show up as the Statue of Liberty. The picture I had was actually blue, so I had a blue bed sheet instead of green. I had chemical engineering, Perry's Chemical Engineering Handbook. If you see this book, it's about this thick. It's like the Chemical Engineering Bible, you know, it's very big and very thick. So I had that in one hand. I had a construction hat, and actually it was a construction hat of one of the companies in America that the students go to. It was one of their company construction hats with a company logo on it. Because chemical engineers wear construction hat normally because they work in chemical plants and you need construction PPE, protective wear when you're out on the plant, and I had a little pipe, which is what the subject of chemical engineering is about fluids. So I had the pipe. So I came in as the Statue of Liberty, and I gave this speech. I was like, I have a dream. I have a dream that one day mass transfer will be translated into English. And there was just raucous laughter. The thing is, mass transfer is a subject in chemical engineering, and it's one of the more difficult subjects for me anyway, and I think by my audience, for a lot of the other students. It's almost like gobbledygook. It was just like, what is this? And so me sort of giving those references, the speech was references of chemical engineering as a subject, as a course subject, chemical engineering department that we were in, within the engineering school, within the School of Engineering in that university. And it was about how I saw us with the rest of the other mechanical and electrical engineers, where we seem to be the minority and the little brothers and little things like that. So my point, I guess, and what I'm saying is, you had to understand the context of where the speech was coming from, which was a young chemical engineering student navigating this difficult subject in this department. That was how, but it was done from a comedy aspect. So I gave all these comedic references, and obviously I was dressed as the Statue of Liberty, and I gave the speech like Martin Luther King. So it was very clear that I wanted to go to the States. It's like, so I think at the end, someone says, we know where you want to go. But it was, for me, it was the response. It was the response of, let me just check the time. Oh, okay, I got time. For me, it was the response of my peers, the professors. Everybody was just, the laughter was incredible. Everybody was on the floor. At the end, they had people, like the students and the professors had tears streaming down their face from laughing so hard. Me, I gave a kind of stand-up comedy performance as Martin Luther King, Statue of Liberty-esque. Suffice to say, yes, I did win the competition, and yes, I did go to Maine, Rockland, Maine, my first preference, but I did go. I loved it, loved Maine. Anyway, the point of telling that story, that long story, is that, apart from saying how fantastic I am, is that I'm not a comic. I am not a natural comic. I don't see myself as someone that uses humor to, I don't know, to have conversations, because there are people that they're just funny. People, when someone describes Doris, they don't say Doris is funny. Like, it's not a sentence that people use to describe me. Doris is funny. I don't use humor in my day-to-day conversations. Yet, in this presentation, I gave a comedic performance, a creative comedic performance. So, what was that? The thing about that is, what people don't know, or even I didn't really realize this at the time, is that I was given a speech about I was describing imageries in my mind. That's effectively what I was doing. This is how I saw chemical engineering course and the chemical engineering degree and the chemical engineering, department. And so I was describing this imagery. And I'm basically saying that I have imageries in my mind as caricature, some kind of a caricature format. And what I did was to describe those caricature format. In my head, I would talk to myself with this imagery, and I never really see it as a big deal. But in doing this series, it's actually, I didn't realize it, but it's just how I think. I think in caricature imageries. For example, right, in this series, while trying to understand all the different concepts that's come through, right? So one example I'm trying to think of now is, when I was trying to, these discussions between me and my inner being, I would wonder about the brain. Well, did they make the brain in labs? Where are these labs? Or did they make, was a full human being formed first? How do they know that the sun and the brain were not compatible, or rather the brain would not operate properly with the sun in the current planes that we had? Like, what did they do? Was there a whole bunch? So I just imagine a whole bunch of higher selves, had made this whole bunch of human being, right? At the time, my daughter used to listen to, there's this gospel song called Under the Canopy. She used to listen to the song a lot, so we used to play it on YouTube a lot. And so in my head, I had this image of all these human beings under a canopy, all waiting for the earth to be built, and the higher self were going, next. And actually, one of the guys said, you know what, I'm not going there because those guys aren't coming back. And I just assumed, or I decided, that the higher self were testing out the brains of these people, and the sun was just the sun was just obliterating these humans. And then one of the guys is like, I'm not going, they're not coming. It's just, these are just strange, these are just imageries in my mind of how I process this information. And then I imagined, and I thought, well, before the earth was made, was there like just one tree and one human exchanging oxygen? Can you see? It's just, in my head, there was an image of one person holding a tree as an umbrella so that he could survive with this oxygen carbon dioxide exchange. My point being that this imageries is just how I think, and it's also how I learn. Just taking the time. How you think is something that we're not aware of the way we think. We're not aware that thinking is subjective to us. You just assume that everybody else thinks the same way you do. So in the story about university, I was mainly describing how I thought, and that was funny. How you think is an aspect of your personal creativity. How you think is subjective to you, we don't realize, we're not aware that the way that we think, the way our mind works, is subjective and unique to us. And how you think is, I guess what I'm trying to say is, you're not aware of thinking. You just do. You just be. You just think, don't you? You're not aware that, I mean, you think, and thinking is a form of existing, isn't it? You're just not aware that you have a way, there is a way that you think about things. And that's what I'm trying to say. Because when you think about it, thinking is within consciousness, light energy. And I've always said that consciousness, light energy is individual to us. It's individual to us. So therefore, the way we also think is unique to us. Consciousness creativity is the way you feel and the way you think. That's unique to you. Okay? Let me stop for a minute. So, what have I said? Just a quick recap. So, what have I said? Quick recap. True purpose is consciousness creativity, consciousness translated, and your aligned path. And consciousness creativity is the way you think and the way you feel, and consciousness translated is the way you act. So what we've talked about so far is the way you feel, the way you think, the way you act in an aligned life path. I'll stop for a minute. Right, so now I'm going to talk about aligned life path. First, what is a life path? A life path is something that you do. So, doctor, nurse, lawyer, you know, kind of like a job. It doesn't have to be paid, but something that you do. That said, being a stay-at-home parent is not a life path. Yes, you do it temporarily, mainly because the kids grow up and they leave. Then what do? Generally, because I know people with disabilities, you know, your kids don't really leave. But also, so if looking after kids in school, it's a life path. Looking after your own kids, not a life path. Looking after the elderly, life path. Looking after your own elderly parent, not a life path. Looking after people with disability, you know, a life path. Looking after your own family member with disability is not a life path. And this is because a family member, you are placed with a family member, your family member. You're placed with your family member? No. It's what I'm trying to say is close family relationships are there to influence and shape you. So they're not life path. Okay? Right. Right now, even if even if you have a disability, you still have a life path. And the reason I say that is because you have a higher self, and the higher self come or incarnate into the earth to do something. Yeah? Right. So as well as having experiences and sharing knowledges and doing things via interaction, the higher selves come here to do something. Right, so in chapter in chapter 7, Library of Stories, I said like the higher self generated thousands of stories and to predict their emotions, and they normally choose one of those life stories as the one in which they will incarnate into the earth plane with. So then you think, I guess my first question when we talked about this with my inner being was, so does that mean that your life, our life, is pre-planned? I just move this back a bit. So does that mean did I knock this? I think I must have done. So does that mean that our life is like pre-planned? Everything is set in stone? And the answer is yes and no. Yes, there is a plan, and there is a plan for your life, but it's a broad and loose plan. And no, because we get to fill in the details of how and of if and how we live out that plan. That's what I mean. So no, not everything is set in stone. And I say, what did I say here? And I think I say that most people, I said if and how we live out that plan. And that's because most people do not achieve or live out the plan as set by your higher self. And the reason for this is because we have free will, freedom to choose how we live out this life. Isn't that great? So there is a plan for your life, but we have free will to choose how we live that life. And most of us don't live our life according to the plan because of free will. All I could think of was fat lot of good this free will is now, isn't it? Because we come here and we spend so much time searching for the perfect life. Right, let me check my time again. So this is the thing about the plan. The plan is designed to make us happy. So one of the first emotions that the higher self knew about, understood, was happiness. The higher selves knew how they thought and how they felt, and they knew how they thought and felt. And so each higher self knows a variety, a myriad of things that would make them happy, that they enjoyed. So in their plan, the higher selves, when they set a particular character of themselves, so themselves in their simulations, in their life story simulation, is about them as a particular character. And I've just said that your character corresponds, whatever your values of your character is, correspond to a type of way for you to express yourself, what your creativity is. So these are efficient. So these simulations, these life stories are efficient. So in these life stories, the higher self would incorporate, I think I was going to call it a happiness clause, things that they enjoy, joyful experiences, things that they love, ways to express themselves without too much effort, without efforting. But they use those things, those elements that the character, them as those character enjoys, like to do, how they like to express themselves. That's what I mean by these simulations were efficient. So in their plan, in that life plan for themselves, in how they will interact with everybody else, as that static character, they would also include the things that the static character enjoys doing, enjoys the most, bring them joyful experiences, brings them happiness effortlessly. If it was going to be if it was going to be, let me see, if it was going to be, God, I had a thought and it just went out of my head. So if it was going to be earned or making a living, that would be part of how, like, just incredible ways to make a living as you doing what you love because of the way this is the way I think, and like it's like making a living effortlessly just because of you are being you, just by just by virtue of being yourself. I mean, that sounds crazy. By virtue of being yourself, you are able to make a good living. I mean, who's ever heard of that? But that, ways to make a good living by just being yourself, these are the elements and variables included in the higher self simulation for a life path, in their stories. This is what they include. And just think, right? Every single person on this planet, 7 billion, has a higher self. And that higher self created a plan for them. And the plan included the things that they are great at, that they enjoy doing, for them to make a living effortlessly. So what have I said so far? I've said that actually I've insinuated that following your higher self's plan is actually the best one for you because it's effortless and it's easy. So why do we have free will then? What's the point of having free will if we could just live out our higher self plan? Okay, I'm getting panicky then. And the answer is because we are here to validate those simulations. Because the simulations are predictive. The simulation says, this is how I would feel in this situation. So you can't you cannot dictate the outcome because you're not really validating the outcome. Does that make sense? I'm saying the higher self is trying to learn about emotions, and emotions comes from different interactions with others, right? Different kind of emotions in different situations. So this is what the higher self are trying to predict, right? Now, if they've said, this is how I will act, react, behave in this situation, your higher self can then not come and tell you, do this situation, and this is how you will act. Like you cannot predict the outcome. It's no longer a test. It's no longer a test. It's no longer a validation. Because, for example, what I'm trying to say, another way of saying it is, me having a child with disability, this situation will cause me these range of emotion. I'll be very frustrated. I'll have anxiety and yada yada yada. Now, if I communicated with my higher self and my higher self said to me, don't worry, we're going to address it. You will have a child with this disability. It's A, B, C, D, but it's okay. Just go through with it. I will not then feel the depth of emotions that was predicted. I might feel a little bit of frustration, but I know, okay, this is going to end, so or this is going to change, so that I won't feel the range and depth of emotions of a particular situation. And this is where we have free will. And also, free will allows the higher self to. So our free will means I can choose, right? I can choose whatever I do, but choosing things that is not in the plan gives the higher self opportunities to feel those emotions, because I've said in other chapters, emotions are so complex that the higher self typically focuses on one, maybe two emotions to learn about within themselves, right? They're learning about an emotion within themselves. Now, as they come to earth to experience life, if you don't follow their plan, you have the free will to not follow their plan or a plan, and you choose something different, it gives the higher self extra knowledge about themselves. So it is acceptable. Do you see? So free will gives the higher self opportunities for them to experience other emotions, as well as validating the emotions that they're working on. Okay? To help us, so we have free will, and our higher self know that it will be difficult for us to navigate life towards the plan that they have for us. So our higher self will deliberately place us in an event interacting with others. What did I write here? I wrote, hang on, where is it? The higher self will place you deliberately in an event or events interacting with others to navigate a life path. So we are placed in event interacting with others to navigate a life path. Okay, now what do I mean by this? I mean that your higher self chooses, the others I'm referring to are usually your family. So your higher self chooses your family dependent on dependent on your character, okay? Dependent on your character, the type of character, static character, where is it? So your family is chosen dependent on this character that you're going to live out in this life. And the idea is for you, the kind of character that you are, how your family will influence and shape you. I'll come to that in a minute, but first I want to talk about event, pure consciousness event. The higher self only deal with event associated with space. So time is not a dimension. An event is usually something that happens. So event is something that happens in a location. There's usually a space aspect, space dimension to it. For us, we always think of an event as something that happens I have an event to go to. There's a day and a time and a place for it. But for the higher selves, pure consciousness, it's just a place. It's just space, a location. And your higher self will place you in a location dependent on other activities that have come before it. So I said the higher self don't have time dimension, or at least they don't use time in their simulations, because time is a physical human plane activity. Time is based on the earth rotating around the sun. Right? Time as we know it is based on a cyclic activity, the earth rotating around the sun. This just goes on and on and on and on and on. What we've done, what we humans have done, is just kind of, we've taken that cyclic activity and we've linearized it, we've stretched it and made it linear. And so now we think of time as something that is straight and linear. But actually it isn't, because it is based on something that is cyclic. Although somebody put a stake on the ground and say, this is a date, and the date will start from today, and so we read dates and time as if it's something that is linear, but it isn't. Time is a dimension that humans invented based on a cyclic activity. So, and I don't want to hijack this video trying to explain time or trying to get you to understand time, but I'm just saying that this is the reason why the higher selves and pure consciousness don't use time. Time is not a dimension. It is not something to take into account in their simulation. What they do have is preceding activities. It's like an activity that happen one after the other. That's what's used. Time is not a factor. It's sort of like saying, it's kind of like saying, when will you go to school? I will go to school after I wake up. What time is that? Doesn't matter what time it is. After I wake up, I will go to school. Do you see? It's more something that happens after another. So they place you in, and these are called events. And they place you in an event, and there are several events happening in several locations, and your higher self will place you in an event where a number of other events would have happened for you to enable you to do, or to enable them to achieve what they would like to achieve in that lifetime. So let's take me for example, right? So my higher self wants to share the knowledge of this God universe series. I need to just check the time quickly. Okay. Wants to share the knowledge of this. So my higher self wants to share the knowledge of the God universe series with the public, right? So there would for me to be able to do that, there would have to be a number of preceding events would have to have happened, right? There will have to be a number of minimum level of scientific advancement and knowledge on earth, right? So from a scientific event, I wrote this down. So example of preceding scientific events would be knowledge of the body and DNA, knowledge and understanding of the different types of energy, you know, electrical energy, magnetic energy, heat energy, knowledge of atoms and molecules, knowledge and awareness of consciousness, some knowledge of black holes, maybe easy availability of crystals and glass beads. So my higher self will wait to place themselves, also known as me, in a situation, in a place where there is already some knowledge, some education. If my higher self placed me in 600 BC, that time, DNA, well, like this God Universe series would be much longer, because I would have to explain what DNA is, what the human brain is. Do you see what I mean? Okay, now there's also non-scientific events that would need to have happened, but they're technological events. So things like electricity would have to have been invented, power plants, and then you have power plants before computers. Computers would have to have been invented, then the internet, and then social media. Because I'm sharing this information via social media. This is not, I wouldn't say the social media aspect is, what is it? It's like, there has to be social media before I share this information. It's just quite a good one, because it gives a large number of people free access to the information, to the knowledge. Can you see? So there is that, and then there's also some other social and cultural events. I'm just trying to get you to have an idea. When I say your higher self places you in an event, that it's the assumption, it's on the assumption that so many other things would have occurred before you're born, or whilst you're born in your lifetime. So things like civil rights equality acts for black people. I'm in the UK. Back in the days of slavery, I wouldn't be doing this. Do you see? Equal votes for women, and most importantly, education for women, because my higher self was going to the character she had for me. I'm always going to be a woman, and to be able to share this God series knowledge information, I myself needed to be educated. So what I'm effectively saying is, so I think I said it before. I said, like, your higher self places you at an event where maybe some things will happen in your lifetime or happen before you were born, so to make their life path, that process, easy. So I'm effectively saying that your higher self chooses when they are born. Via you, chooses when you're born. Chooses when you're born, when I'm born. Yep, right. So, I'm going to check the time again in a minute. So if I go back to what did I say? What did I say earlier? I said that the higher self deliberately places you in an event to interact with others to navigate a life path, right? So some of these others I had referred to as, some of these others as your family. Your higher self chooses your family because of the type of person you are. Okay, let me just stop and start this. So your higher self chooses your family because of the type of person you are. So I'm going to use myself as an example here, right? Summary of my life. I was born in Nigeria in the 70s, moved to the UK as a teen to be with my mother. I studied chemical engineering, I've just talked about it. Worked in corporate, married an Englishman, have 2 girls, one of whom has disabilities. I keep saying has. So, Alex, that's just a short summary of my life. I'll explain the shortest one, which you know by now. So my daughter, Grace, had disability so that I can show or prove the existence of the inner being. And that's what I've done. I talked about this in, I talked about the existence of the inner being in chapter 17, you know. But if Grace wasn't, if Grace didn't have a disability, it would have been a lot more difficult to prove the inner being, the existence of the inner being. Okay? And also, Grace was always going to be my child, regardless of who I got married to, regardless of who my partner was. So there is your inner being, your higher self always has this agreement because of I told you, the learning and the sharing. They choose your family to do their learning with. So Grace was always going to be my child. My higher self and her higher self had that agreement. Okay, so now the second one is engineering. Why did I choose engineering? Because of my dad. I chose engineering because of my dad. My dad's passed away now a few years ago, but I wanted financial independence, not independence, financial security. I wanted some financial security. So my thinking was shaped by my dad. My dad, we grew up. So we lived with my dad when I was younger, and in Nigeria, conservative country, conservative society, and my dad, he loved me. You know, I was Queen Doris and everything, but he did not treat women very well. I didn't like the way he treated women in general, including my mother. It was just something. And this was part of the society in general, like it was the norm. So he was shaped by the environment in which he grew up in, and I saw that. And for me, even though he loved me and I loved him, I did not want to be treated the way that that I saw him treat women. I thought he was abusive to them. Women are second-class citizens, degraded. You had no rights. So Nigeria is a country that even when a husband and wife splits up at the time, I don't know what it's like now, I haven't been back in years, the children are the children stay with the father, not the mother, because the mother hasn't got, usually the mother hasn't got very much, they don't have anything. So they stay with, and I think, you know, it's because the father has the security, has the, you know, the house, the money, the job, whatever. The woman is just thrown, kicked out. So like, and a lot of women are not educated. So that environment for me made me want to have some kind of financial security so that I wasn't treated the same way as I saw my father treat women, and as society treated women in general. And to me, in my little mind, I saw my way out as education. I thought if I had a decent education, I would get a job. I wanted to get a job that gave me security. I just wanted a job for myself so that I could earn my own money. That was my motivation. And based on what I like by process of elimination. You know, you had traditional, there were traditional professions that you chose: doctor, lawyer, what else these are the typical ones, isn't it? Doctor, lawyer, vet, nurse, teacher. These are traditional professions that's usually chosen. And I didn't really, I chose engineering by means of elimination. I didn't really want to look at sick people all day. I thought lawyering was boring. I decided, well, you know, you like maths and chemistry. I don't now. Then I did. So why don't you just choose something that it has maths and chemistry? And then I looked on the careers book, and I went maths, chemistry. Oh, look, there's something called chemical engineering. You can do chemical engineering. Like, oh, okay, we'll do that then. And I actually didn't really fully understand what chemical engineering was when I chose it. I looked at the course. It said based chemistry, maths, and then it said they earn good money. So okay, tick, let's do that. And this is how I chose my course. This is how I chose my degree, process of elimination. So I studied to degree level because of my dad and the country that I was born in. His behavior influenced and shaped how I perceived life. His behavior influenced how I perceived life, and therefore how I wanted to live in this life. I wanted my own financial security. That was what drove me to study to degree level. Okay? Now, this is the thing. I have a friend who is, where am I? Okay, good. Oh my God. I have a friend who is also a chemical engineer. She's an engineer, but she did engineering. She also did engineering because of her dad. Her dad is a different kind of engineer, I think. Yeah, different engineer, mechanical or something like that. So she did engineering because of her dad. The thing is, my friend cannot make a decision to save her life. Just buying a car, my friend will and ah, back and forth. 3 years later, she's still trying to buy this goddamn car. You know? So, two different people doing the same subject, right? and coming at it from different perspective. For me, I was doing something opposite because of my father's behavior. I'm doing this course. Now my friend, she likes engineering, but she did it because she was copying her dad. So her higher self, the way I view this, her higher self placed her, because of her character, because of the type of person she is, with someone that will influence the way she made decisions. Because making decisions was something that she was weak at. You see? So she's weak at making decisions, places her with her family that was chosen for her, would help her in the way she navigated this life, to make some of her decisions would be smooth, because all she had to do is just copy something that she already liked. That's what I mean, that your higher self would place you with others that would influence your behavior based on your character. I see something I didn't like, I went opposite. That wasn't the biggest issue. For my friend, a part of her character trait was maybe a lack, something she was weak at, so her higher self would place her in a situation where she didn't have to use that character trait in trying to navigate this life. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Right, so. This video is very long, I know, but I'm deliberately going slow just so there's an understanding. You understand what I'm trying to talk about. So I've talked about life path, and I've talked about your higher self. So I've talked about life path, what they are, how you choose a path for yourself. But how about an aligned life path? What is an aligned life path? Right? We are thrown into this world. There is a perfect life for us. What is it, and what does that look like? The thing is, I chose engineering. I chose engineering as my job, but it is not my aligned life path. An aligned, I've written something here, an aligned life path is when the choices you make coincide with the decisions constructed by your higher self in their simulations. Let me explain that. An aligned life path is when the choices you make coincides with the decisions that your higher self constructed in their simulations about your life. So the higher self in their life story simulations, I said this before previously, based on the character that you are, there is an ideal, based on the character that you are, there is a life path narrative. Okay? Is what am I gonna say here? Right? So you, as a particular person, as a particular person, as a persona, as a static persona, you have a consciousness. You have your own consciousness creativity. So there is something that you like, not that you like, that you do easily, and your higher self uses those activities, and your higher self uses those activities to construct a life path narrative in their simulation. So for us living this life, when we make choices that is the same or similar to those in the simulations, that is an aligned life path. It means that you're pretty much doing what your higher self said you would do. Constructed. Those simulations are efficient. They are designed to make you happy. You're pretty much doing something that will make you happy. It doesn't get any better than that. You're not having to form happiness. You just Can you see? Now, let me help you. Let me explain this. I'm a little bit worried about time. I'm a bit worried about my microphone running out of batteries. I've been talking for so long. Right, so going back to engineering, right? So I chose engineering. I didn't love it. It paid the bills. You know, I was content with it. I didn't love it. I was content. It was fine. You know, it paid the bills. And I think a lot of us are in this situation. You do what you know. If I went to look for another job, I'm more inclined to look for some sort of engineering position because it's what I know. Not because I love it, but because it's what that's the only thing I know how to do. Now, I left it. I left it because I thought there was something else, in all honesty. I wanted to do something that I would enjoy, you know. And thank God as well that I have a husband who can support me as I navigate this enjoyment path, because not all of us have that luxury, you know. We all have bills to pay, so I'm really thankful for that. So this is the thing. I enjoyed tutoring. I started thinking about things that I enjoyed doing, because I wanted, rather than think of the money, I wanted to think more about me enjoying stuff. What did I enjoy? And I thought, well, you know, I like tutoring. Maybe I should go into teaching. So I applied for teaching. And during the application process, I looked at the national curriculum. And I was looking forward to teaching. I applied to teach mathematics at secondary school. And because I'm like, well, you know, you still like maths, you'll enjoy teaching maths. And then I looked at the national curriculum and I just thought, no. I might enjoy teaching, but actually I didn't see myself enjoying or teaching, not that subject, teaching the content of the subject. You know, and what I mean by this is, I looked at the curriculum and they still had long division. Like, why? Why do we have long division in the maths curriculum for secondary schools? Who does long division? Like, I've worked in corporate life, never used long division. And you know the craziest thing about it is, long division came in Victorian times when people didn't have calculators, right? So you needed to do a lot of mental maths because you didn't have calculators. But now we all have phones with calculators in it. Like, why would I need to do long divisions? So I just felt like some of the topics in the curriculum felt so outdated. You know, it felt so outdated to me that I just, the thought of having to go to school every day and impart this knowledge to the kids, I thought it would just depress me. So I thought, no, there's so much else that we have advanced so much, technology, so much. I didn't really want to be teaching kids old-fashioned stuff. In particular, things that I knew they would never ever use. They never do long division. They'll never do long division. I don't care which job they go and do in future. They're never going to use long division. And just, so I pulled my application. I pulled my application, not because I didn't want to teach, but the topics within that subject, I just didn't see myself being happy teaching that. So yeah, so I pulled my application. The thing is, at that same time, that was the same time that I began having my discussions with my inner being about consciousness, about the God universe. It was just chit chat. We were just talking, right? My inner being was helping me with my daughter. I was learning about the God universe, and I was excited about this information, this knowledge. I didn't really, it was just for me. I didn't really take it in with the intent to share. I was just excited about wow, wow, wow. And then not long after, I thought, ooh, I really need to share this. You know, this is really good stuff. Can you see what happened there? I had inadvertently cultivated my own topic to teach. I don't want to say I didn't invent the topic of consciousness, but you know, the way I want to talk about consciousness is unique to me. So I will talk about the inner being. Anybody, I noticed this, anybody that showed me a smidgen of interest about the inner being or the consciousness and spirituality, I would just, oh, I found an audience. I would talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. This was something that I was passionate about. I was excited about. I wanted everyone to be aware of the inner being. I wanted everyone to just know how to connect to their inner being. I wanted everyone to know what the inner being could do, you know, and I would just talk and talk. Your inner being can do this. Anyone that would give me a time of day about this, oh, I feel sorry for them now. I'm thinking about it. I'll just chew their ear off just talking about it. This is like I found a new passion. And I have this way of just talking to people about it. I had cultivated my own topic that I wanted to teach. I want you to connect with your inner being. So I did do one-to-one coaching, but I've actually decided that that I don't want to do one-to-one coaching anymore. I want to reserve my one-to-one coaching for the crystals consultation. I didn't mention this. I also actually quite like to help. I mean, I've helped my daughter, like with the impossible. So I help other children that have the same disabilities as my daughter. I help them too. So if you want to talk to me, I do a consultation, free consultation. We'll talk about the issues that you have and I'll help you with it. There is a link in the description. Go to my website and you'll see how I do these and you can make an appointment with me for these one-to-one consultation. So I used to do one-to-one coaching, but I've decided actually that I've decided that I wanted to host to her. Can't talk. I've decided instead to host live events, face-to-face live events. And I don't want it to just be local or national. So I'm just not going to do local or national. I'm going to have like international events. I want to have international events. events. So in these events, I'm there, my inner being is there, you're there, your inner being is there. So in the event, I will communicate with my audience's inner being via my inner being, right? So I'll do that. And this is so that like, how do I explain this? This is so right. So there are three main things I'll be doing in my events. One of them is communicating with the audience's inner being. The second thing is having my audience experience communication with their own inner beings. Like, for them to experience what it's like to speak to your own, to the pure consciousness side of you, you know. And rather than do one-to-one, like, I just feel like I would reach more people if I had live events. So that's the second thing, just get more people in the room and have them. So every single person in the audience will experience a communication with their inner being. So I want that in my live event. And finally, what I'd like to do is to provide answers for people. This is an interesting part for me. So whilst I'd like to, for me, I'm still want you, my primary objective is for you to communicate with your inner being, and I'll do some teaching along those aspects as to why that's the best course, why that's the best plan of action, and I encourage everybody to do it. I just feel like there are some situations where some people might need immediate answers for some things. Don't ask me things like, why did your partner pass away? No, it's not that. But I just feel like there are some people that are going through difficult time in their life, and it would be really helpful to just get a short answer version from your inner being, to just say what, why. You know, there are people going through infertility. There are people struggling to find a partner, struggling to be happy. And sometimes, and whilst you're learning that dialogue process, you know, that is my number one go-to. Sometimes you just need to understand. You just want, like, I want a little answer, so that whilst I develop my understanding and communication and dialogue with you, it helps. And I think I want a little segment in my event for that, to help people with answers. Not necessarily, not closure. I am not a medium, you know. It's not someone died and they've come to the living. No. When you speak to your inner being, you can ask your inner being that question. I'm not interested in that. I'm not a psychic. I'm not a medium. I'm not a psychic. I'm none of those things. I'm just someone that speaks to my inner being. And because I know that the inner being is connected to your inner beings, and sometimes it's just helpful to know why. I've seen, like, I sometimes listen to people a lot, and and they talk about the problems that they go through. They don't know what I do. I don't shout it at the rooftop, but they probably will get this video now. But what I'm saying is, I listen to them, or sometimes I watch videos and I see some people suffering in the videos, and I talk to my inner being and I say, can we help that person? And she says yes. See, for her, nothing is impossible. And I can feel the pain that that person is going through, and it would just be nice to just help, you know, them in the way that I wish someone, when I was going through the difficulties with my daughter and her difficulties when she was younger, and I just, oh my God, I just didn't know where to turn, where to look. Imagine if I'd had someone just say, listen, she's actually here, and she's actually here to help you, and things will become clearer soon. And it's because of your relationship, she has her disabilities, and there's a reason for it, and just something, and that, oh, it's not forever. Just that would have just made, that would have really helped. And it's that kind of help I think I would like to provide for others. So yes, well, oh God, I've gone on and on about this. I'm saying that, see, I'm saying that I would like to, I want to host live events and do these things in my live event. And why did I start talking about this? My God, time been talking, time is going. Right, so back to what I said. An aligned life path is when the choices that you make coincides with the decisions of your higher self, right? So you make videos, you're a writer, or you're a comedian, or a teacher. The standard teaching is not for you, so your higher self has cultivated a life path narrative. There is a way that you can do your teaching in a way that's perfect for you. There is a way that you can do your writing that's perfect for you. Might not be your standard thing that everybody else does, but it's perfect for you, and it will work out perfectly for you. Okay? There is a way, if you're a healer, that you can do that, and that's perfect for you. An aligned life path is when your higher self includes a life path narrative in their simulation, and the aligned one is when you make choices that coincide with that narrative. So if we go back to this now, your true purpose is how you feel and how you act, how you feel, how you think, and how you act in a particular life path narrative. So that's all for this video, for this very, very long video. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.